To kick things off. So, hello everyone. My name is Alfredo Corral, part of Palo Alto Networks, and excited to kick this conversation about intersectionality. So, as you see here, from limes to mojitos, the ingredients for navigating intersectionality. So, what is our intention with all this, right? We want to share examples of what intersectionality means, right? I mean, this is something that I would love to learn a lot more about. And Edgardo and Daniela here are pretty well versed, and I'm sure that most of you here on the call are also pretty aware of what intersectionality means. And just to reflect on our power and skills in relation to that. So as you see here, so Daniela, would you like to quickly give yourself an introduction?
Yes, thank you, Alfredo. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for having us. Let me tell you a little bit about myself in a minute and a half. So I'm born in Mexico. Actually live in Mexico. Had the fortune of getting raised in the U.S. I'm the fourth smallest one of a Mexican very conservative marriage. I have 2 kids, 3 dogs. I actually do like my dogs more than my kids. I know it's really not nice to say that, but what can I tell? That's the truth. I mean, I love my dogs. They pay more attention to me than my children. They're not so small. My children are 23 and 21. And jokes apart, I love them dearly. They're the salt and pepper of my life. And they are the ones who have helped me be brave. I'm a strong person. I'm a fighter. And hopefully with this chat we're going to share with you guys, you can get to know me a little bit better. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daniela, so much. And then I'll pass it over to you, Edgardo.
Hey, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I'm a senior recruiting business partner at Palo Alto. I am born and raised in New York, and I'll share more about that in a second. I come from a big family. I'm the youngest of 8 by way of 2 marriages. A fun fact, I think I have like 23 nieces and nephews, maybe a couple of grand nephews in there. So I come from a really big, very loud, very party celebratory family. So that's something about me. And part of what I do and what I've committed my career to is figuring out ways that we open doors for Black and brown folks across the country and the world to have access to strong jobs and to help companies figure out how to be more equitable along the way. So I'm excited to be here and share a little bit more about my intersections and how it influences my everyday life.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Edgardo. So yeah, let's jump right to it. So then what is intersectionality? As I said, like the intersections, like what is one aspect of one area mixed with another? It's just such a very interesting space. So we have a video here that I'd like to play for you guys just to kind of explain a little bit what this could mean. Oh, I just meant to play here. There we go.
Today we hear the call for full equality for women and distinctly for women of color from a multiplicity of perspectives. Intersectionality is a term we often hear, but what does it mean? Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the term in 1989, explains it with a metaphor.
Consider an intersection made up of many roads. The roads are the structures of race, gender identity, class, sexuality, disability, and the traffic running through those roads are the practices and policies that discriminate against people. Now, if an accident happens, it can be caused by cars traveling from any number of directions, and sometimes from all of them. So if a Black woman is harmed because she is in an intersection, her injury could result from discrimination from any or all directions.
Intersectionality in all discussions of the rights of African American women today is built on the work of previous generations who have always been a part of the fight for full equality. Sojourner Truth escaped slavery in 1827 and became one of the most powerful women's rights activists of her time. She emphasized her identity as both African American and woman in her famous Ain't I a Woman?
Hey, Alfredo, can you mute your mic for a second? Because I think we're getting an echo.
In 1893, Anna Julia Cooper addressed the World Congress of Representative Women, saying, "The white woman could at least plead her own emancipation. The black woman, doubly enslaved, could but suffer."
Oh, I think I cut off there, guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I don't know what's happening there, but I'll pass it over to Edgardo here. Is there still feedback right now?
No, I think you're good. I think it's because you were off of mute. But I can kind of recap that for everyone. Sorry for the tech issues there. So just to kind of re-summarize what intersectionality is, it's essentially this study that looks at people who experience more than one form of discrimination or oppression based on any of their identities, right? So you might look at people who might experience discrimination because they're women, but they might also have something like a disability, which is another group that tends to experience discrimination and oppression. So it's about studying what happens when those two things exist in one person, and how do you think of that from a legal lens, but also from a sociology lens and the impact that it has on people. Part of it is not to sort of start the oppression Olympics. The purpose behind it is for us to understand how within our own communities, which can be sort of oppressed, or some people say marginalized, think about those who are inside of it and may experience double forms of that, or triple or quadruple, based on who they are and how they identify. So hopefully that kind of summarizes that for you all, and it kind of gives you a sense of how to think about that playing out in our, specifically our Latinx communities that we all experience. So hopefully that explains that. And then that's a great way. Thank you, Alfredo, for queuing me up to share about my story. And you can stop sharing if you want, because I know it's a little big out there. So again, name is Edgardo, and I'm here to awkwardly and uncomfortably share with you all my story of my intersections. And I'll share a little bit more, which you got a preview of it, but I'll also share about how I took sort of these limes and I made this bomb-ass mojito that I like to drink on and use to get me to move ahead in life every now and then. So I was born and raised in New York City, and however, my family's from the Dominican Republic. And there's a lot of things that we're known for. So some of them is how celebratory we are. You might have heard of bachata at some point. Our hunger to kind of really want to connect and build community with one another wherever we are in the world. You could be in Alaska, you could be in Germany, you could be in anywhere in the world really, and you would find Dominicans looking for other Dominicans to connect. And another part that I think is also makes us very unique and special is the ability for our Afro-Latinidad to still exist today, despite all of the things that have happened in our history. Some things I'm not so proud of, right? So the way that we're depicted in media sometimes as the drug dealer or the criminal or the Latin lover, the way that unfortunately we've gained this reputation of anti-Blackness penetrating our society. And the last one for today is how homophobia has become sort of such a large part of our society and Latinx society overall. And let me elaborate on that. So I grew up in a Christian family that is mostly Catholic. Since I was young, there was a lot of conversation about what is right and what's wrong. And one of the things that I learned at a very early age was that, or what that was taught to me, I should say, was that homosexuality is one of those things that are wrong and you do not touch. And, you know, I remember that at that time too, heterosexuality being set as the norm. Like, this is the way things are, and nothing really lives outside of that. So when I was like, I don't know, 5 years old, I remember adults asking me, so, ¿cuánta novia tú tienes? How many girls do you have? And I'm like, still even like 5, and everyone would laugh and cheer, and they made this whole big deal out of it. And I also remember sort of simultaneously family members making fun of men who they perceived to be gay, from my own cousins to Guate Mercado. Gay men were often seen as a joke, and you often saw people mimicking their behavior. I even remember once seeing delivery person not get a tip because the person thought they were gay. And I saw similar behavior on TV and school, the block that I grew up in New York, and then eventually everywhere that I went. So through time, you kind of internalize this message that being gay was wrong, that femininity was dangerous for gay people, and that I needed to hide any gay part of me for my own physical and psychological safety. And what happened simultaneously was that as I got older, I started to discover that this very own Dominicanness that I was so proud of, and its association with Latinidad combined with the socioeconomic status that I grew up in, would also create a unique set of challenges for me. So, for example, my name alone, which I'm really proud of now, it's Edgardo, not Eduardo, not Edgardo, not El Gato, as kids used to joke around. It can have an impact on my likelihood to get called back for an interview. So there was a research of studies, of 28 different studies, where they took studies from Harvard, Northwestern, the Institute of Social Research in Oslo, and it showed that although Latinx hiring discrimination has decreased, white Americans are still 24% more likely to get called back from a job interview than Latinos based on their name if they have a quote unquote Latinx sounding name. So in addition to that, I remember throughout my career experiences where I worked at jobs where I had customers tell me that they couldn't understand me because of my accent and they wanted to talk to someone else. I remember folks making automatic assumptions about my immigration status. And I remember questions that I didn't see other people get, like, what made you decide to go to college? As if I needed more of a reason than other folks to do it. So the challenge was for me that through time, you kind of like take all these messages and all these experiences. And then I ultimately like really never got to a point where I was comfortable coming out. So I actually spent a lot of my career in the closet because I didn't want to give anyone any other reason to other me anymore. And this was, tough because we all know the importance of building social capital at work and to move forward. But instead, I pushed away a lot of meaningful relationships with my coworkers and even with family. I, through time, ended up working at this large company in New York where I had coworkers who were connected to my family and friends in New York, and it made me want to go further in the closet. So the thought of me, even though they had all these great resources for LGBTQIA people, was that, what happens if like my family finds out, or like even worse, what if my parents find out? And so I ended up putting a lot of this energy into my job and making sure that my product or whatever I delivered was always the topic of the conversation and never me as a human being. And all I did was focus on that. Meanwhile, what a lot of people didn't realize that this was sort of like my way of coping, and that it was still kind of like eating me alive. So I had a choice after some time, after years of thinking about this, and I started working with young people, and they talked about sort of them looking to me as a role model. And I realized that I got to the point where I wasn't doing them or myself any service by staying in the closet. And simultaneously, I heard a lot of Black and brown folks talk about their coming out story and how usually it starts off really bad, but that it does get better. And they usually get through it. So I decided when I was 27 years old, I had lived in the DC area, that I was going to tell my first manager that I'm gay. And she smiled and she laughed. She's like, child, I knew that. I knew that. So I was just waiting for you to tell me. And for me, it was like such a big relief. It's like Atlas without the glove on their back. And it sort of not only made me realize sort of the value of taking that risk, because not only did I not have to lie anymore, but I also built such a stronger relationship with my manager than I ever expected. So that eventually gave me the confidence at the next job to kind of do the same thing. And this time I did it on the first week that I was working. I came out to my manager, she laughed about it, and then we kept talking. So the result from there, basically, for me was that I was able to gain this confidence to like slowly talk to others about being gay. And then on my 30th birthday, in a very dramatic Edgardo fashion, I came out on Facebook. I had this picture of me overlooking the California coast, and I talked about growing so much. And then at the end, I slipped in that I happen to love a man. And then people were so supportive, and I really felt a lot of love that I did not anticipate. And eventually that gave me sort of the confidence to come out to my parents. And even though we still have work to do, it wasn't sort of the perfect story. I don't have to pretend anymore. And for me, that was worth the risk. So to wrap this up, the lesson for me was that when you are a person who are navigating these intersections, there's the legal side of it. And then there's also the social side of the concept of taking risks. Like, you are put in front of situations where you have to take risk all the time because there's one system that's working against you or the other. And this can be a really scary thing. But through time, because you're navigating those challenges, you kind of build the muscle to kind of work through that resilience and the power that you have to move through. So that became kind of one of my ingredients to kind of actually grow myself, was to tap into taking risk and tap into my ability to like find my own power and my own resiliency. So that was my lime or my limes. And that's how I made my mojito. I hope you all enjoyed that. And thank you all for listening.
That is inspiring, Edgardo. And as I've worked with Edgardo, he lacks no confidence. He carries himself well. We do all these events, and I've just been so proud just to be in your presence, Edgardo. So thank you for talking through about your story. I didn't know that level of detail behind it, but that's very inspiring stuff. And I hope that everyone learned a lot. So just because I do want to put in the chat the question, so we can have charlas about this, right? So we'll spend like 5 minutes on each question. I'll put it here in the chat and I'll read it out to you guys as well. So the question here is, who or what do you lean on when navigating the fear of taking risks, right? So think about what that question means to you. And let's just have an open discussion, right? Daniela and Edgardo, please definitely weigh in as people have answers. Yeah, please take a few minutes just to answer, and we can just have conversations from there. So who or what do you lean on when navigating the fear of taking risks?
I would say sometimes friends, you know what, while people start friends, when sometimes you don't want to go to family or burden them with your fears. But basically, at least in my case, friends and family going first.
Yeah, for me, I just put this in the chat. It was definitely my cousins and my best friend. The funny part was that these were always women who like I drew my power and confidence from, and kind of like the support. And it always, again, kind of it created this window for us to be vulnerable with one another and for us to provide the kind of support that we didn't have. In college, it was my best friend who was a male, who identified as male, and I think him seeing his brother experience sort of similar challenges also made him so much more empathetic to it. So I was always grateful for that.
Fantastic. And I see here Leslie said that your older sister, definitely. And here we have Stephanie saying that cousins for sure. Keeping it real, but will love me regardless. So that's amazing relationship there. And Kazmin says her mother for her resilience, right? So I think we see a lot of like those like unconditional love, but sometimes you may not have that. You may branch out elsewhere. You have friends, you have cousins, family, like whoever at some point is who you can trust. Like it's huge, right? Like then you just don't feel alone. As Edgardo said, like getting the world off of himself, being Atlas, right? Through all the burden that he felt with that. So yeah, any other people, or what else do you lean on? Maybe it could even be like, I don't know, motivational videos you see, right? I don't know. It could be not necessarily just people, but anything else that you hinge on. Maybe it's like a good luck charm. But yeah, all right. So I'll be pasting on here the next question. All right. So just copy and pasting here. Here we go. And crystals too, right? So what was one risk that you took in your career or personal life that paid off, right? So I think Edgardo mentioned one, right? Like coming out and finally embracing like his full identity. That, as you said, Edgardo, was so inspiring. Risk for me, I mean, risk is just even switching from like a job, right? Sometimes that could be really nerve wracking. You might feel comfortable in one area, you set up your networks, people that you trust, but then you move elsewhere, right? Because you want to advance in your career. That's a huge risk, right? That you can see. Daniela, do you have any risks that you've taken in your career?
Oh, yeah. So once it's my turn, then I'm going to be sharing about the risk that I took and how it paid off and what I learned out of it.
That is fair.
So
We'll give you those minutes when you present. That is correct. We don't want to steal from
let's
your
not steal the thunder.
exactly. That's fair. But yeah, I mean, the risks. I mean, risk can come from anything, right? Just like, are you gonna stand up to your bosses if like you feel that you were slighted at one point? So I'll actually tell a little bit of a story. I actually had to escalate at one point in my career when I was told, "Oh, did you even go to the university? Like to the university I went to, right?" And I was really taken aback, right? So I was like, "Really? You're gonna be telling me this? Is it because of like, do you see me as less? Like, I didn't even know what was going on, and I felt alone, and I had to escalate that, right? And actually, it was good that I did, right? I actually felt better. I actually was able to move forward. So I know if any time you ever feel like lost or anything like that, there are managers, there are people that are supposed to be there to support you. So definitely look out for that. And I see Leslie says something here that she was laid off last year, invested time in data analytics boot camp instead of jumping into another job. And well, Leslie, we hope for the best. That's amazing. I mean, taking that kind of big leap, maybe you were unhappy with your current role or you just want to do a new pivot. That's great. I hope it pays off soon for sure. There's definitely a growing field in data analytics. Data analytics is everywhere. So you're definitely not alone, but that's amazing. Anyone else? I know we have 32 people looking. I see the little
And the
eyeball up
best
there. And Frances says she left her job in June because it was toxic. Exactly, right? Sometimes you just have to take a step back and it's like, hey, is this right for me? Do I feel safe? Do I feel like I'm growing? Do I feel like I could be appreciated? So Frances, that is very, I don't know, something to be proud of, to take that kind of step. Yes, exactly. Scary and exciting. See, that's the thing. You have to change the mentality. It's like, it's exciting. It's a new chapter, right?
Yeah.
And Alexis, looks like you have something in common as well. Good stuff.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. And I'm like, I think that's an important part around mental health. And I know that my parents, they always taught me that you work hard no matter what, and you like go through the worst thing that you could possibly go through. But what matters at the end of the day is what you get through. And I wish there was more conversation around like, also your sanity is really important and your mental health is important. And you should be able to identify when it's time to find a safer environment for you. So +1 on that being a risky move. And I think it's always smart, like calculated risk, right? You know, sometimes there might be a benefit there, and being able to identify that can help you get through it. So big shout out to you.
Yeah, and I see Eileen scares you a little bit, but excites you a lot. Alejandro, you left teaching. Hopefully there's a great next step for you. Marisela, now pursuing year-long certificate in UX web design. That's awesome. And then Angela, dang, that's 7 years in business of food. That's a big risk, entrepreneurship. That's amazing. Alrighty, so I'll now switch gears over to Daniela. So I'm just going to quickly present the good slide that we have here. You guys can see my screen. Give me a moment. So now we'll move over to Daniela, who will speak around gender and accessibility.
Thanks so much, Alfredo. Well, again, thank you, everyone. And I want to share a little bit of this started when starting from the beginning, even though it's repetitive. But well, When I was a year old, my father died, and being a good old Catholic, conservative, good family, the provider was my dad. As in most of the cases in Latin America at that time, dad was the provider, mom was the person who stayed home, who took care of the kids, took care of the house. And then suddenly she found herself with 4 kids, no income, never have worked, and a year-old baby on her hands. My mom is a very, and I remember someone said a little before, one of the comments is she said, "My hermosa mamá," and her resilience. That definitely also, I think it sums up most of our mothers, if not all of our mothers. They are resilient, and that's one of the greatest things they give us. Well, so again, when I was growing up, money was scarce. It was, she always, I had a, even from before, I had a kind of a difficult health, some health issues that were not, were minor, but I tended to have anemia. So my mom was always worried that I ate correctly, and we didn't have the money. So we didn't have a way to have, a proper balanced meal, but she needed to give me something. And she would give me a lot of sardines in a tomato sauce that were the most accessible thing there was. And if there are Mexicans in the audience, you might know Conasupo. So she bought it at Conasupo, which is a store for low income. And it was this strange mix up because I had the fortune of being a smart person that got on a scholarship, and I was in a very private, nice, high-end school that got me, and that actually got me my next big, or the greatest opportunity. So I was given the chance to come into the United States, well, to study on a scholarship sponsored by the government, by the American Embassy. And I was here. My mom didn't speak the language, and I know, I'm guessing some of you have experienced that, or when growing up. Uh, she didn't speak the language. She was studying. She was trying to learn English. In my case, even though I came from the American school, it wasn't. I mean, it was something that I spoke in the mornings, but not in the afternoons. Not when going back home. And then suddenly I was in a private boarding school. I didn't have the money the rest of the kids had. I was in Waukesha, Wisconsin. I mean, just picture it. I mean, I'm 48. Imagine I was 8, and they'd never seen a brown girl. I actually never thought of myself as brown. Funny enough, growing up in Mexico, I was never labeled that I was brown. Then I come to this new school, and all of a sudden, you have a different accent. Oh, I don't understand you. Oh, say it again. Oh, you speak funny. And then I was on the first day of horseback riding lessons. Again, as I said, it was a nice, fancy boarding school. I got into an accident, in a very bad, tragic horseback riding accident, and I was at the hospital for many, many months. And from that day on, my health was, I don't know, you could call it precarious, complicated. It was difficult growing up, but my mom, she has a phrase, and it goes, lo que no te mata te hace fuerte. Y deja de llorar, porque los llantos no resuelven nada. A luchar y a pelear, mijita, que las cosas no salen. And even though it kind of hurt, it's kind of difficult to hear at that age, it was really something. It helped me pull through. So years went by. I became an expert in school, in my first jobs, of hiding my health issues. When you have a not so good health, and you have a precarious or terminal diseases, which means that they're going to be with you for the rest of your life, and there are going to be sometimes that you're fine and you're doing well, and then some others that you're not doing so well. So I became a real expert in hiding all of this, especially when going into the professional world, when you really want to be considered by your abilities, by your curriculum, your what you do, and wanted to be considered and be treated normally. I didn't want to be put in this other category. So time went by, and I never told anyone, and I would hide it. I was such an expert. I worked from the hospital. I worked, with an oxygen tank. I went to work at this. Not proud of it. It wasn't. It wasn't the right thing to do. But every time I heard someone talk about, oh, this guy, especially also being a woman, married, 2 kids, that you're already in that category. You're a woman. You're going to be taking care of your kids first. Maybe job is not going to be so much your priority. I was always kind of afraid, if what happens if people find out that I have these health issues, and what happens if I'm not considered for growing within the company, for getting a job with more responsibility, to do more stuff. And time went by, and by the time 8 years ago, when I started at Palo Alto Networks, I was tired of it. And something that I know God, it's also something else that my mom says: Dios no te da más de lo que puedes manejar. So my daughter she was discovered with an autoimmune disease, and she started going through all this phase, and I wanted to give her something to be brave. So when I was going into this job, and I really, really wanted it, like those times when you want it with all your heart. Yes, exactly, Aline. Dios aprieta, pero no ahorca. O no ahorca. Ahoga o ahorca, pero te las dicen con las dos. Y eso lo decía mi mamá. So having to live with this, going, these phrases that do help you, as maybe, I don't know, if as a crutch, as a way of faith, they help you pull through. And I wanted to give something to my child. She got sick also close to that same age. She got sick at 9, and she lost the sight on her right eye. And I wanted to teach her, to be resilient, to be strong, to accept herself, to be brave. Oh, I'm sorry. I promise I wasn't gonna cry. And one of the things I decided to do is I was going to be honest with my manager at Palo Alto Networks. And I told her, and like Edgardo mentioned, she laughed and she said, so what? So you can't work? And I said, no, of course I can. Okay, what's the point? But thanks for sharing, but we still want you. And I was competing with a single, not married, a non-married, no kids, guy, very able, very fit, very into the healthy body vibe. And I was scared that him being so right, physically, was going to make me be, an unfit candidate. But then again, it didn't. I got hired. They told me that they had hired me because of I was the best candidate for the job. I started gaining new positions, and until the position that I have right now, which I'm in charge of Mexico as a country. And it made me this risk, this, getting rid of this fear of not telling people, made me feel like a lift had been taken off my shoulders. And it actually did help my child, because now she's 21. She's studying law, and she started with her first internship. And she was brave enough to tell them, these are my health issues. I have no problem in telling you guys. And she still got hired. So obviously my lesson was, I should have been braver, or I should have been brave at an earlier stage. I I embrace now who I am, and I learned that you need to embrace yourself and accept yourself in order for the rest of the people to do so. And I was able to teach my kid the most valuable lesson. And that is it. That's my story.
Daniela, I I'm almost crying over here. Thank you so much for your story. I mean, one big thing I take away is it's never too late, right? You said you wish that we could have done this earlier in our careers, but we all have our own paths, so we all want to get to that point, right? I mean, I don't want to speak behalf of everyone, but I think we're all very, very just inspired and proud of you and your steps in your career and just setting that example for your daughter so she can have the confidence from the get-go. So the inspiring. I'm trying to hold back here. I'm sorry, but amazing stuff. Thank you. Ooh, okay. Uh, but yeah. Let's see. I guess we can move on to the cellos. And I see you're muted.
I
Sorry,
said
Daniela. Were you saying
it's
something?
good to after that we can laugh. I mean, like my mom said, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. So and it did.
Exactly, exactly. And I love the sayings that you provided. Thank you so much for all that. And I do see people writing stories here, how they relate. So I see Omar here just remembering how his mom woke up so early.
Yeah,
So que no hay nada peor
you
con el
could get
sapo,
milk
yeah,
at Conasupo. You're right,
con
Omar.
el sapo. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. Alexis and Francis, like this, just raw, like this is who you are, Daniela, and this is what you showed us. This is no, we shouldn't be afraid to show that side of us. But that's fantastic. We love your strength. Thank you for that. I guess, yeah. I mean, purpose of this is also to have some charlas, right? So we do have some questions here to kind of get things going, and I'll type it here just to get it going. Um, when did you first see the value in your differences? All right. And I think Daniela, you kind of
I'm
spoke to that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 8 years ago, I was finally able to see myself and embrace myself. But what about the rest of you guys?
Yeah.
Share with us your experiences.
I can start while folks type in the chat. I know for me, it actually was the Latinx ERG at my very first job, where like I went to a primarily white institution for my undergrad. So I was always part of a small group, and there it felt like the difference didn't really like add too much value, other than like being able to find other people who are like you and connect to them around that. But then there was actually like a group dedicated to creating a platform for Latinx people, and they would allow us to sit in like leadership roles, and that was something that I can like bring to work and create programming around it and opportunities for other people to connect, and then in turn use that for my own like professional development. For me, it was just like, oh, okay, well maybe being a Latino is actually something that's going to help me out, in addition to like being bilingual, and being able to translate things that my coworkers could not because they only spoke one language, or they didn't speak Spanish. So I know that for me, definitely when I first started my first full-time job.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say a quick thing. Yeah, like I think the ERGs or the ENGs, however you call them, like really kind of help you elevate yourself and have confidence to go through your path and companies and whatnot. But I think with those kinds of groups, I started seeing that the different, like I was happy that I could just be who I am as Latino, and then now see the more differences of like diversity of thought, right? That I was able to like, okay, people see me as just someone, like we're all part of the same group. We don't necessarily have to like, I don't have to be called out as different just by my appearance, but it was more starting to think I could actually, the way I think, the way I think through things, the way I do things, right? That was starting to be valued, right? So it's a different mind shift, right? Because then it's like, okay, people accept you, then you start going into that next level of what kind of value from the differences you can bring. Yeah, that's my quick thing. How about everyone else? I know there's a lot of value. Everyone here with their stories about, I don't know, quitting their jobs or taking the risk for something else, right? Oh, here we go. So Frances here, when she went to college, she was the only Latino in classes. Yeah, and made you appreciate culture so much more. Absolutely. Sometimes, I mean, I don't know how we are, everyone's experience, but sometimes we do kind of stick out in like a large auditorium, right? Or maybe you don't, but yeah, you start appreciating, I don't know, maybe the sense of family, the sense of food traditions, whatever, what have you, will be a little different that you can appreciate more. Anyone else? Or we can just jump to the next question. All right, I think this is good for this question. Let's go on to the next one. So, how do you continually embrace your individuality? Edgardo, Daniela, do you guys want to start?
Well, I think one thing I've been thinking about is just because I don't work with young people anymore, how do I use some of my time to volunteer to help other people who were sort of in similar shoes as mine when I was at an age where I had trouble connecting with people. So I think about using sort of like my understanding of the world to volunteer and help others who are in similar situations. And that in turn like validates that like, okay, you know, maybe being different is something that is like, or being who I am is something that's like even more valuable than what I realized, because now it's helping other people along the way. So sometimes that is kind of like sharing my story. Sometimes our resource group is going to do a community service event with LGBTQI plus youth in Chicago in a homeless shelter, and we're going to be sort of connecting with young people there. And I'm looking forward to kind of hearing from them and what they need from us who are adults in positions of authority and power, so that we can do better. So those things kind of help me reinforce the value of the perspectives I bring and think about how do I make it like full circle along the way.
Awesome. Daniela, anything from you? Not to just call you out.
Yeah, no, I do it, I think, every day by reminding myself what got me here, and that everything that I am today is the result of everything I've gone through.
Easy. That's like it's short and sweet. That's exactly right. Yes. If I were to add something here, it's something that Edgardo kind of touched on, right? It's being, I think we still have, I think there's like still opportunities to work with, like, I don't know, this like organizations like Cristo Rey, where you can mentor people who are coming up and probably need that little bit of confidence. But as you progress in your career, the more you see that as you keep going, there are people that look up to you, right? So, and as you said, Daniela, like I should embrace who I am, right? And I do, and I'm unapologetic about it. I would go into conversations and I speak casually because that's kind of the way that I work, right? But then I could tone it down to be a little more professional if needed. But I mean, I'll still joke around, right? I want to get to know you. I'm not gonna let that go just because I need to, like, I don't know, appear very pristine and what have you, right? So, yeah, thank you, Marlon. Yes, for loving what we're saying here. Anyone else, though? How do you embrace your individuality? It's either how you give back, how you've accepted yourself. Anything? Any thoughts? I know it's 32 people. I know I see the eye. Exactly. Of course, you have to. I do have a a roommate from last year that he would wake up to Los Tigres del Norte every morning, right? He's just unapologetic about his music that he loves. And sometimes you feel like, oh my gosh, this is too much for the morning. But sometimes like, no, this is who he is. Like he's letting it go, like getting ready for the morning and just getting out there, this is how he wakes up. So that's awesome. And then Angela, often the only Latina male in meetings, and you make sure to push yourself to contribute in conversations. Absolutely. You definitely have to put your voice out there, stand up and just speak your mind, right? Don't feel like, oh, just because you're the only female. No, everyone in the room should say everyone's opinion in the room matters. There's a reason why everyone's in the room in a meeting, right? Everyone's chosen. Everyone is there to give their very, very like positive attribute in there. Okay. Alrighty. So with that, and I want to flag up here some resources for you guys to just start looking up, and I'll share my screen in a second here. So yeah, so Edgardo put some things together for us. So please read. Here's some books here. More Than Ready by Cecilia Munoz. We actually had a book club recently around this book, thanks to one of our leaders in the in the Juntos ERG. Fantastic book. Just that everyone, regardless of where you are, you're more than ready to take on the challenges, despite who you are or whatever challenges you may face. The Memo. This is a book. Do you want to speak to that a little more?
I can add on that. I see some folks have read it in the chat. So you all know it's a really great book. It's so well written. It speaks around specifically the experience of a Black woman. Again, this intersectionality started as a concept that came about the struggle of Black women. So Minda Hart talks about her experience and other women she meets along the way. And it's funny, it's serious, it's informative. It's a really great read. I can almost guarantee that in the first chapter, you'll be hooked. So I strongly recommend that. And I can share a little bit more about the other ones here, Fredo, if it's helpful. Some of you may have seen Black in Latin America. It's a series that came out on PBS. And it goes through, I believe, almost every Latinx country and talks a little about the history and the present of people of African descent. I think it's available on Amazon now for rental or purchase and like most major retailers. So you can check that out. Super informative. And another one is the Mental Health Podcast is the Latinx Mental Health Podcast is one where they have different episodes where they focus on things from like disabilities to mental health issues for Latinx people. And they bring in experts sometimes. So you kind of get to hear different ways of getting support and coping and support in another. And I see Stephanie just putting out Latinx therapy. Sounds like it's another one. And actually, if anyone has any ones that they want to shout out in the chat, please do. We know there's a lot more out there. I can add in one article in the chat where they highlight 9 different Afro-Latino podcasts that are out there right now that might be worth you all sort of checking out as well. I know we're coming at time. We definitely, first Alfredo, thank you for kind of bringing us along the way and facilitating everything. We can leave sort of the next 5 minutes for questions from the audience. But we do, I guess, Daniela, I don't know if you want to have any last words, but from my end, just kind of bringing back to what I take away from people who live at the intersections. We sort of experience a lot of challenges, some of us more challenges than others. And I think out of that, there sometimes can be the silver lining where you realize you have a lot more power and strength than what you ever even considered or imagined. And that kind of puts you in a position that in some ways you're ahead of others because you're a little bit more prepared for those challenges that are inevitable in life. So I'm really grateful, despite all of these systems that are in place that we didn't create and we shouldn't have to navigate, that we are still able to kind of come out of that and our culture survive and who we are survive, and then we get to open doors for other people as we share our voices and our experiences. So I'm just really grateful for everyone joining, and for you all, for Daniela for being vulnerable with your story, and Alfredo for you joining us and helping us get here, and for this really active chat. So yeah, we have 5 minutes. We can answer questions from the chat, or we can play music, or whatever folks want.
And Edgardo, obviously, just to you, Daniel, Edgardo, amazing stuff here. Thank you. Also, you call out Daniela, but Edgardo, we have to call out you too, right? Like, you opened up as well, and you were vulnerable. And as I said before, when you finished up your discourse, you're one of the most, I don't know, driven, just confident. The story that you told, like, we can see, at least I can see very personally how you carry yourself now, just having all those experiences. So thank you for inviting me to help kind of navigate this conversation with you guys. But yeah, as I see, for example, Frances, her list of books are growing. Fantastic. And then Latina, another Latinx podcast. Are these all? I'm assuming they're all on Spotify, right? Yeah.
It's a mix. Some of them are on Spotify. Some of them are in the iTunes. Some of them I think are on SoundCloud too. So it depends on the podcast.
Oh yeah, and Audible as well through Amazon. So another way to listen to these podcasts. But I'm very excited that there's so many resources that we can, I don't know, take on. I didn't know about the Latinx mental health one. I think that's a fantastic one to look at. But yeah. Yes, as Stephanie says, thank you for the vulnerability, everyone. But yeah, any other thoughts, questions, big controversial topics? I don't know. What else do we want to blow up in these last 3 minutes here?
I'm loving all the recommendations in the chat. So if you have any documentaries, books, articles, feel free to put it in. And yeah, I think I'm excited I'm going to talk about something personal this weekend, to like watch some TV. I'm dying to watch Squid Games. I hear that's like the talk of the town. So if you know it, please don't provide any spoilers in the chat. Okay, I see. Okay, Squid Games is of interest. So
Definitely something worth to see.
yeah,
that's all I'm going to tell you.
That's good to know.
Okay, that's good to know, because I started like the first 10 minutes and I was just like, what's going on? I guess
you have to pull through. You have to pull through.
Okay. Fine, I'll pull through.
Keep on watching. Keep on watching.
Sounds good.
Apparently, also the Game of Thrones prequel trailer dropped this week. So soon to come for any Game of Thrones fans. A new season, which I think it starts 200 years before the series aired. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff coming up. Yeah, we won't ruin anything for you, Candida. we won't spoil it for you. And I see Joe Arellano put podcast Defunct but Still Good Latinos Who Lunch, the Friend Zone. That sometimes is, I don't know. If you're put in the friend zone, it could be a negative thing, but I'm assuming it could be more of like a wellness thing. That's funny. But yeah.
I can also add, there's another one called Tres Golpe podcast. It's 3 Dominican women. One of them is a friend of mine. They started a podcast. I think they're on season 3 now. And they talk about their experiences being first generation immigrants, some of them Dominican Americans, if you're interested. It's pretty funny.
Fantastic. And I see Francis mentioned Rita Moreno. The doc will be out on Netflix soon. So I don't know if you've been watching enough. What is it called? Like the Netflix has like that algorithm that knows what you're watching. I'm sure it'll pop up. So
Yo, we have a guest. Alejandro, you have some questions for us?
Yeah, one good question. First of all, shout out to all y'all. Like, thank you for having this chat. I actually had a full day of work, and I just being remote, and it was just a nice way to end the work day, you know. And I'm also kind of like need to talk to people, so I need to jump on this call and ask a quick question real quick. So my question is, how did y'all get involved with Techqueria, like hosting this conversation? Last year I attended the summit and I was still teaching and I got a lot of value from it. This year I officially got into tech. I'm just starting out. I'm at Techqueria again, and I'm wondering for next year. I'm like, I love the conversations that you guys are having. I would love to like kind of learn more about how to get involved.
Yeah, so I can answer this really quickly. So my relationship with Techqueria started, I think, 3 years ago through the Slack channel. I know that this summer they had a call for speakers. So definitely use the Slack channel. I think it's the main one to ask to tag the Techqueria folks. But I know there was a call for speakers that I think it was 2 months long, where you can submit a request for a session. And that gave you sort of consideration for one of the speaking sessions. So that would probably be the best way to go, unless you're one of the companies that are sponsoring the event.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be on the lookout for that.
All right, thank you. We're happy you joined us.
Yeah, I don't know how to get out of here, but maybe you... Oh, here we go. All right. Peace out, guys. Saludos. Un abrazo, guys.
Saludos.
All right, I think we're at time, right?
Yeah.
Great timing.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the summit.